Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm your host today, Val Pettigras, and with me, representing the 5th Assembly District, which includes Suffolk County, is Assemblyman Al Graf. So good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
This is our first show together, and it's a very exciting time. You are a new member. You are one of 17 or 18, and that's got to feel good for you, too, because there's a lot of new energy, new blood coming into the Assembly.
And you see from the last election, there's a new philosophy also with the new members. And the new members are very focused on getting our government back on track. So we're working hard, trying to get government as usual to change a little bit. Sometimes it gets difficult, though.
Well, they need to change a lot because there's a lot of things that are going on here that are just not acceptable. I mean, we could talk about ethics reform or the budget process, which of course we will be getting into because it's usually the show before the show that's most interesting. You had some very interesting and insightful points when you were talking a little bit about the budget and some of the things that are going on. One in particular is a proposal of new taxes, which I found to be very surprising, especially because that was given the thumbs down by the governor, and the Assembly has decided, no, we need more revenue.
Well, we now have the baby tax. We have the baby tax, we have the cancer tax, we have the sick tax. Everywhere else, you know, you heard the old saying that the air is free, not New York. In New York, we tax you from the first breath that you take until your last breath. We tax you from birth to the crypt. And, you know, look, we can't go this way anymore. The yoke, the financial yoke that's been placed around our neck when it deals with the MTA tax or the unfunded mandates, this budget proposal that came out from the Senate just doesn't deal with it. It's oppressive. When I was out there campaigning, when I was out on the campaign trail, I went into a school district and I asked, there were 50 students in an auditorium. And I asked by a show of hands, how many of you believe that you can go to college, come back here, find a job, raise a family, and buy a house? Not one hand went up. That's disappointing. And when I asked them, why is that? Every single one of these kids said, because of the price of taxes, because of the cost of living on Long Island. The tax burden, we have to move someplace else. The other thing that was telling was, I talked to senior citizens out there, and they're telling me that all of their kids moved away. And they say that once a week they talk to their grandchildren on the internet, for those that know how to email. Once a month, if they're lucky, they get to talk to their grandchildren on the phone. Once a year, if they're lucky, they get to see their grandchildren. I grew up around my grandparents, and my grandparents had a lot to do with me becoming an adult later. They taught me a lot of values that these kids are missing right now. Plus, the grandparents are not in their grandchildren's lives. That's unfortunate. We have to change that. We can't afford this anymore. The other things that they told me was that they cannot live here or live on Long Island with a pension. They just can't afford it. So we have to get this under control. And if we fail to get it under control, we're just going to keep losing people. One of the things I tell people all the time is I came here, when I came to the Assembly, I actually took a cut in salary because it was the right thing to do. And I want to help change the course of this government. I have 3 children. And in years to come, I want to see my children around my dining room table. I don't want to visit one in Virginia. I don't want to visit one in Florida or where else they're going to move. I want to be in my grandchildren's lives. And the course that we're taking right now, we're just not going to be able to do that. There are some things in the Assembly budget that I do agree with, but I don't think they go far enough. There are some things, a lot of things in the Senate budget that I do agree with. For instance, Stony Brook University has our burn unit. Right now, we're in jeopardy of closing down that burn unit. These are for our firefighters, for people that get hurt in a fire. And what happens is there's dedicated beds in New York City for firefighters. If they close down our burn unit, not only are we going to lose beds, but the city is going to lose their dedicated beds also. And I try to talk to my colleagues on the other side and say, look, this may be insignificant to you, but it will cost you. So there's a lot of work to do on the budget.
And this is something that I would like to revisit as soon as we come back, but first, I would like to present Assemblyman Al Graf at a swearing-in ceremony, which must have been a very proud moment for him as well as his family.
Mr. Al Graf. Al is a U.S. Navy and New York City Police Department veteran, and also active in the fields of elementary education and law. And holding the Bible for Al today are his wife Mary, son Charles, and daughters Jean and Caitlin. Please join me in welcoming Assemblyman Al Graf.
I, Al Graf,
I, Al Graf,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of
and will faithfully discharge the duties of
the office of Member of the Assembly
the office of Member of the Assembly
of the State of New York
of the State of New York
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
I thought that was an appropriate time to introduce that piece because you talked about your reasons for coming into government in the first place and taking a pay cut and the fact that you wanted to see change, and that's why you're here. And so many times we lose sight of that.
Well, you know, I look at the 18 new members and I look at the members of my caucus, and we're very focused. We're very focused on trying to change the course of government. Yesterday, we were discussing that budget till 7 o'clock at night. And you can see the disparities and the different philosophies at play here. And we tried to make our points. We tried to bring the majority back. They all voted lockstep to approve the budget and or approve their budget proposal. You know, this is the first volley. I'm hoping that it meshes together and that it won't hurt the people in my district. And I'm doing everything I can. I'm talking to everyone I can and trying to bring out points where they look at things in a different light. They'll see how it affects them also. I'm doing everything I can to change some of the things in
And
this
you
budget.
hit it right on the head, because until people feel as though they're affected by something, they usually don't pay as much attention. And the budget process is something that, and the legislation here in Albany, is something that affects every New Yorker out there in one form or another. Back in January, Governor Cuomo gave his budget proposal. Let's hear what he had to say. It was very sobering, and yet a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel.
We're here to obviously talk about the 2011-12 executive budget.
Governor Andrew Cuomo pulled no punches as he explained to lawmakers why state government is facing billion-dollar deficits.
We spend too much money, which is not new, but it's worse. 74% increase over the past 10 years in spending. And when you look at what we spend more than we make, which is never a good formula in life.
The governor also made the point all that spending didn't buy the state all that much.
Well, maybe we spend a lot of money, but we get great product for it. We really get our money's worth. If only it were true. Number 1 in education, number 34 in results, number 1 in spending and Medicaid, number 21 in results, $1.6 billion in economic development, number 50 in terms of result.
Assembly Republicans say it's a message they've been giving for years.
Certainly a sobering message of cost reduction is sorely needed in state government, a message that I've been talking about for years. Consolidation of state agencies, less spending, no tax increases, which is very, very important, but it's going to be challenging times.
So I'm very optimistic, but the other thing we have to look at is mandate relief. What we hear is we have people working on it. We have people working on it. The time has come. Show me where you're going to cut these mandates, because we're over-regulating government. We're the most overtaxed, over-regulated government that's around. And it's time for us to look at the entire package. It's time for us to restructure government and to stop making other branches of government do things and not give them the funding for it.
Government is supposed to serve people. That's what this was about. And that's what we have to get back to.
Two things hit me with this piece: that we spend too much, we spend more than we make, and every time I hear it about being ranked number 50 in economic development and that we spend billions of dollars for that, it almost leaves a pit in my stomach because businesses are not coming to New York.
You know, it's not changing though. I sit there in committee meetings and I listen to proposals being brought up, and they're unfunded mandates. They're piling more unfunded mandates on. And the thing that drives me crazy is I always question, number one, how much is this going to cost? And I get the same answer all the time. And the answer to that question is, oh, that's to be determined. Wait a minute. Would you sign a mortgage agreement with the price to be determined?
And this is what I mean, that sometimes it's the show before the show that really makes sense, because nobody in their right mind would do something like that.
Right, and the other thing they do is, you know, who out here would sign a blank check and hand it to this legislature and say, listen, you
Especially
fill in
this
the
legislature.
Yeah, you fill in the amount. Tell me how much I owe. Right? No one in their right mind would do that. But getting back to the governor here, one of the things he did is he hit Long Island disproportionately. He hit the suburban areas disproportionately. And he was told, don't do that. So, you know what? We need, it's got to be fair. Long Island can't be the piggyback for the rest of the state. They all think that Long Islanders are rich. That's not true. A lot of Long Islanders are just getting by. And they were just getting by before they got hit with the MTA tax. LIPE is killing us. Right? Our government, look, we have a long way to go. We're working hard to change things. However, I don't think that the proposal that was put in by the Assembly majority is getting that job done. I think they're blind to what the people have been screaming for. They're blind to mandate relief. They're blind to the fact that we got to get rid of this MTA tax and they have to become more self-sufficient. They're blind to the people voting with their feet and leaving the state. They're blind with businesses closing up and moving elsewhere. Until they are able to face reality and start dealing with the problems that we face here in New York, it's not going to get better. I mean, sometimes you feel like a voice screaming in the darkness, all right, and trying to explain to them where the pitfalls are. But sometimes it seems like they're just not getting it. You know, but we're going to continue to scream. We're going to continue to put our points out there. And until they wake up, and hopefully, you know, the Senate has a lot of proposals that'll help with people being able to afford Long Island. And hopefully once we're done with the budget process, I can sit here to say to you, you know what, we're moving forward. There are no more new taxes. We are looking at deficit reduction. We are doing our best not to hurt anyone out there.
You know, when you talk about nobody would write a blank check and, you know, you wouldn't pay for a mortgage that you didn't know the amount that you had to pay for, don't some of your colleagues understand that?
How can I put it? Sometimes when they're putting in bills, it's like, look, this is nice. We should do this. But they don't explore it more and say, okay, what's the cost of this? Who's going to have to pay for this? Where are they going to get the money? If you look at the school districts, they're focusing right on, we're going to cut you here, we're going to put a cap here. But by the way, the mandates that we impose on you, where we tell you how to spend the money, you still have to do that.
Unfortunately, we are out of time right now. I know it goes very quickly, but we do have time to let you out there know how to reach your representative. Please contact Assemblyman Al Graf at 859 Montauk Highway, Suite 1, Bayport, 11705, or give him a call at 631-589-8685. I want to tell you what a pleasure it was to have you on the show today, and I can't wait to catch up with you again. And we hope that you join us for our next edition of Assembly Calendar.